Okay, so this video is going to be how to hydro dip interior plastics, but specifically it's sort of making an ek9 Type R replica centre console using an EJ9 one. So at a bare minimum, you're going to need hydro film, you're going to need the activator for it, you're going to need primer, black base coat, and then obviously some sandpaper and masking tape and a few little bits like that. So obviously you remove the piece from the car and strip it down to its bare bones. You then need to key it up, primer it and paint it in black base coat. If you just try and hydro dip onto the bare plastics, it slides right off. So here you can see I painted it and now I'm just cutting out what I need from the hydro film. Obviously you want to make sure there's some overlay and some movement. You want to make sure you put tape around the edge of your film so it doesn't move when you put it in the water. You'll see I didn't do this later and you'll see what happens when you do that. Obviously any bits you don't want the hydro dip film to go on, you need to mask them off now. So you need to test your film to see what side goes up and what side goes down in the water. So lick your fingers and grab onto it, and whichever side sticks, so in this case it's top side, that side needs to go down into the water, sticky side down. So you want to use a warm tank of water. They say 33 degrees, I use like 50 degrees because it come out of the hot tap. And you want to lay it down onto the water. Obviously try and prevent any air bubbles. If you get any air bubbles, you need to finger them out sort of in the initial stage because it will start to absorb the water now, the film, and it will start to become a lot more fragile. See, because I didn't put tape around the edge of my film, you're going to see it spread out massively once the activator is applied. So you want to leave that for a minute or two just to absorb the water before you apply the catalyst. So now I'm about to spray the activator. You want to do this so it's like wet, glossy on top. So you can see as I hit it now, the film starts to spread out, and that's because I didn't have the tape on it to keep it holding its shape. And you can see around the edges it's starting to break down. If I had the tape on, it wouldn't have done that. So that's a mistake that I made. And you can see there's a hole in the centre. Luckily, there's a hole in the centre of my piece, so it's going to miss that. So when you hydro dip, you want to lower the piecing gently. I didn't. I sort of whacked it in, so that's another mistake I made. You want to give it a shake so the film sticks to it and it moves the film off the surface. You want to push it to the side and then you can pull it out. If any like bits of film or something that have gone onto the surface when you're pulling it out, don't try and flick them off with your finger because you might damage the film beneath it. Just shake it off and move on to the next stage. But I'm just showing you here how it looks when it comes out. Quite glossy, obviously, because it's got this slimy layer on it, which we're going to clean off now. This was my third time doing this because the other two times I had the film the wrong way up in the water. So for my first time doing it properly, it come out really well, I think. And then after this, what you need to do is you need to run it under a warm tap to remove the slime that's on the surface. Okay, so just under a lukewarm tap, give it a good wash, and you'll be able to see once it's off. It's quite obvious, really. After you've given it a thorough wash and all of the slimy stickiness is off, you'll see it's got like a satin / matte finish to it, and you want to leave it to dry. You can give it a pad down, just don't manhandle it too much. And then after that, you need to hit it with 2K clear. So you can see here, this is before the 2K clear. It's got a slight texture to it. It's come out really well, I think. Not a bad, texture comparison to the genuine one. I think I could hunt down for a better match than this. See, if you're not interested in making a Type R replica one, this is almost where the video ends for you, really. You can just hydro dip it and then clear coat it, reinstall your clock and all the other parts and you can move on. But obviously I am going to be doing a Type R replica one. So you can see with the 2K clear, you want to do like a few light coats. Yeah, you don't want to whack it on too heavy, okay, because it will run. So you want to do like 4 or 5 light coats, a couple of minutes in between them to let it flash off so it doesn't run until you get the desired finish that you want. So you can see here it's really nice and glossy. Obviously that's not a great match to the genuine Type R one, but what I would do next time is I'd use a satin 2K clear or like a matte 2K clear. It has to be 2K clear though, it can't just be like a regular lacquer. If I was to do this again also, I would mask off the areas around the top vents and around next to where the heater controls are to match it better, and obviously I would make sure next time I use the tape. So now we're moving on to the clock delete to make it a really nice ek9 replica. So I've taken out all the internals. You want to give it a good sand with like some 120 or some 150 grit, making sure to apply some more pressure around where the holes are so you have somewhere for the filler to go so you can smooth it out nicely. Now on the back of the holes I'm just putting a little bit of tape just so I have something to push up against so the filler and the epoxy just doesn't come out the other side. It's totally up to you what you use. You could use some masking tape, you could use a little bit of fiberglass, it depends how in depth you want to go with it. You could even plastic weld these holes up. It just depends what tools you've got. There's no wrong or right way to do it, just whatever works really for you. So then I filled the holes with a little bit of epoxy just to give the filler something to back up against. You don't have to do this, but I did. I just mixed a little bit up and just sort of pushed it in with the end of a pen there. Once that had hardened, I used a little bit of sandpaper and a razor blade just to take off the residue on the surface. And now it's time to mix up a little bit of filler, just some regular car body filler. You're not going to need a lot for this. Obviously make sure to try and push it down into the holes as much as you can, and just give it time to properly go off before you start sanding it. I made sure to add a little bit extra on top after, so it was protruding the holes, so I had something to sand off and I could properly blend it rather than it sitting a little bit shallow. So after that, a good sand, clean up the edge of a razor blade, and then you want to primer it. You could see I needed to do a little bit more filler work, so again, sand, prime again. So obviously prep work is what gives you a really good finish in the end, and the black base coat will fill in some of these tiny marks, but that mark was just a little bit too much for it to fill in. So it's looking a little bit better there. Again, I hit it with a little bit of sanding before I hit the base coat on. And then it's exactly the same process again. I just did it in an old pan here because it was such a small part. Again, I forgot to put the tape on so it spread out and I got this massive stretch. So to prevent that, you need to use the tape on the edge so then you don't get the stretch and you get a consistent finish. This time, obviously, I pushed it in a lot slower. Give it a wiggle, same as last time, but yeah. So you can see here it's slimy and it's got a few little bits on the surface. After running under the tap, you can see how it goes satin quite quickly and it starts to dry off. So you can pad it dry again before you hit it with a 2K clear. Let it properly harden before assembly. You can see this is the final piece. Obviously it is very shiny, and to make a proper replica next time I'll use a satin or a matte 2K clear, but it does look really, really good. And considering it was only my first time doing this with the film the correct way up in the water, I'm amazed how well it come out, with no like professional tools or anything, just some hot water out of the tap and an old bucket. If I'd gone slower when pushing it in, it probably would have got into them holes a little bit more. But again, next time I'll be masking off those parts anyway, and then you can see the stretch there on the clock delete panel. Obviously, to make it a true Type R replica one, it needs a little Type R badge there, or like a sticker or something, but I don't know how I'd get hold of one of them, so I think I'll probably put a switch there or something, just so it looks purposeful. So you can see it's not a perfect match, obviously, because the carbon weave is different, and obviously, you know, it's much more glossy, but I do think it looks better. I think it's a much more high-end looking piece. I also think, you know, unless you had an ek9 replica and a genuine ek9 side by side, I don't think most people would know the difference. Yeah, I think it's a really impressive piece, and I think it come out really well, so it's well worth the money. All the links for the bits I use are in the description below.